Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you for attending this meeting of the Licensing and Public Safety Committee on Tuesday, the 8th of March, 2022. Before we start this evening, I would just like to outline some housekeeping rules. There are no planned fire alarms, so if it does sound, please leave via the emergency exits. Can I request that all mobile phones are kept on silent or switched off? Thank you. Members of the committee who are attending in person here at the Civic Centre, other members of the council may also dial in this evening via Microsoft Teams to observe and or participate in the meeting. Only members of the committee present in the Civic Centre are entitled to vote. Please note this meeting is recorded and live streamed via YouTube. The web link for this is displayed on the agenda for the meeting, which can be found on the council's website. Members on Teams are asked to keep their microphones on mute and only unmute when they wish to speak. Could I remind members to unmute themselves once they have finished speaking and enable the meeting to proceed smoothly. This evening we'll be allowing up to 3 members of the public to speak for no longer than 5 minutes. I will invite the public to speak after the committee have debated the reports. You will need to approach the microphone in the crossroom and press the button which is say speak. Sanitising facilities are available on the desk. Okay, so before I go any further, before we get into the meeting, I would just like to make a note that today is International Women's Day, and it's good to see that the men in the room are outnumbered 9-5. So good, great to see. More power to the women on this day. So great to see. Okay, let's go through to the agenda, please. Coral, any apologies?
Yes, Chair. We've had apologies from Councillor Jane Bell, Councillor Rainsbury and Councillor Wharton Hardman, who is in attendance on Teams. We also have Councillor Margaret Smith present as substitute for Councillor Rainsbury.
Okay, thanks, Coral. Yes, welcome, Paul, and welcome, Margaret, this evening. Any declarations of interest? Just may I note, members are requested to indicate at this stage in the proceedings any items on the agenda in which they intend to declare an interest. Members are reminded that if the interest is disclosable pecuniary interest, they may or they must leave the room for the whole of that item. Any declarations, please? Okay, for the record, Coral, none. Minutes of the Licensing and Public Safety Committee. I have the minutes of the last meeting of the Licensing and Public Safety Committee in front of me for approval. Are there any points of accuracy in the minutes and can be proposed in minutes for approval, please? Can we have a proposer, please? Second, please. Councillor Montague, thank you, and I'll sign them off as a true record. Okay, agenda item number 4. Right, this item has been pulled from tonight's committee meeting after some legal advice, but it's a positive reason why we've done it. So, unfortunately, the report has been withdrawn. Officers have identified the need to consult further on an element of the policy wording. This is following the feedback from the consultation. This will allow the trade a chance to comment on the proposed exemptions before members make a decision. So feedback will be presented in an additional meeting next month. So Taz, would you just like to comment on this one, please, because it's something which you picked up. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So there was an element of the actual proposal which wasn't consulted on. So in order to ensure that all the trade are able to have their say, I advise that the element should be withdrawn, the actual agenda item should be withdrawn and be consulted on. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I think it's important that if we're going to do something, we do it properly. And well done for Taz for picking that up. And I think we thought that it was appropriate to just pull that item for now. We've waited a long time for it, so let's get it right. Okay, agenda item number 5, please. Consultation feedback on the single-use restricted private hire badges. Chris, over to you, please.
Thanks, Chair. I'll just share my screen with the PowerPoints. One moment. Okay, so agenda item 5 is single-use restricted private hire licences. So a report was presented to members of the Licensing Public Safety Committee on the 7th of December 2021, advising members about a recent request from a South Ribble Council licensed operator for a single-use restricted private hire licence to be available from this licensing authority. A written request from the licensed operator can be found attached to this report as background document 1. Members accepted that there was a national shortage of drivers and discussed the use of technology. Committee agreed that the licensing section undertake a consultation exercise with stakeholders on the proposed changes to the taxi licensing policy and agreed to receive a report with the outcome of the consultation exercise at this future meeting, which is today. So background, for some time, requests have been received from a number of operators for the possibility of various aspects of the application process removed, mainly regarding the local area knowledge test for drivers predominantly working outside of the borough or don't have a need for local area knowledge of the area. Various licensed private hire operators have advised that they are struggling to employ drivers due to the obstacles put in place during the application process, with required documents as per the conditions of the taxi licensing policy. The current policy can be found within section 9 of background document 1. The written requests received are from operators who solely operate school transport or airport services. These licensed operators are not performing normal private hire work, performing school contract work that requires a regular collection of one child of specific requirements to be taken to the same school every day, or are performing specific airport contract work or corporate contract work which takes passengers from their home out of the borough, usually to the likes of Manchester or Liverpool airports. These are not drivers who are working predominantly in the area, and they're not doing short journeys in and out of South Ribble, and the knowledge for the local area is not required. So what's the need and requirements for a local area knowledge? To make sure all drivers are licensed, to give members of public the best service possible. Every private hire Hackney carriage driver is expected to collect passengers on time. Licensed drivers are expected to perform journeys in the shortest way possible. And if a driver takes the wrong route or get lost, this may cause additional charge being passed to the passengers and result in a conflicting situation. So what are the requirements of the current test? So the knowledge test costs £25. If after 3 attempts applicants fail, the applicants must wait 4 weeks before taking another test. In order to pass the test, applicants must answer 15 out of 20 questions correctly on the following topics: private hire, Hackney carriage vehicle conditions and legislation, the highway code, places of interest within the borough, usually includes pubs, schools, churches, restaurants, etc., routes through the borough, South Ribble Council boundaries, and have a basic understanding of English language and numeracy to be able to communicate with the passengers and count money and what have you. So option 1, what would the badge allow? So it would allow the badge would be conditioned as a private hire badge without the requirement for a knowledge test completely. It limits what type of work can be performed as part of the conditions attached to the licence, would only allow the holder of a licence to perform the following tasks: pre-arranged school or special educational needs transport, pre-arranged airport work, or pre-arranged corporate travel. All other documentation required in the application process would still be required before a licence was granted, and applicants would still be required to complete a level 2 qualification in taxi licensing, which would ask for a basic English need, and maths needs will be covered within that level 2 qualification. Enforcement of the licence. If drivers were caught performing any other work other than private hire work permitted through the restricted licence, this would constitute a breach of conditions and would be enforced accordingly. A hard line would be taken by officers, and unless extraordinary circumstances were in place, the driver would be placed in front of the committee for a decision as a consequence. The committee could have the option to revoke the licence or impose suspension or as a consequence of that. Option 2, the knowledge test could be scrapped completely for all applicants. Additional Hackney test would still require the additional test as a Hackney driver. So all applicants, Hackney and private hire, take the first test and then also an additional test for Hackney carriage drivers if they want a Hackney carriage licence. So due to the use of developing technology within the taxi and private hire operations, drivers now have PDAs within the vehicles, which pre-booked jobs are sent to the drivers through digitally. The use of radios has been superseded by technologies, and the drivers are no longer given jobs over the radio, but digitally through their PDA systems. As the journey is pre-booked, the system pre-programs this into the sat-nav with a route pre-programmed into the PDA system. But when the driver accepts the job, it automatically gives them the predetermined journey of what they should be following. The need for local knowledge has now been negated by the use of technology in that way, and sat-navs and PDAs in the vehicles sort of supersedes the need of the actual driver to have that local area knowledge. Currently, as a requirement, the policy, all new applicants must provide proof they've got a level 2 qualification or equivalent. The basic English and maths knowledge is required to be able to pass the course and obtain the qualification. If operators are not using PDA systems, then a simple satellite navigation system would again negate the need for drivers to have a local knowledge of the best routes from place A to place B, as this would be provided by the satellite navigation system. And obviously, a satellite navigation system can be used to program in which is the fastest route from A to B. Option 3, to keep the test in place but remove the local aspect of the test completely, keeping a section of the test as a competency test for English, numeracy, and a test for using a satellite navigation system, taking into account the above sections 21 to 25 of the report. As mentioned on the previous slide in option 2, technology has changed. Drivers now have PDAs within the vehicles that pre-booked jobs are sent to the drivers through. The use of radios has been superseded by technology, and drivers are no longer given the jobs in this way. The use of a PDA system. We use the PDA systems and the drivers' technology through, the operators' technologies, that if we need any evidence of where drivers have been at certain times, we often get reports sent through from operators which use these systems now, and they can pinpoint where their drivers are at any point. So the consultation exercise, letters were sent to all drivers and operators. Paper consultation forms were provided to every licensed driver, proprietor and operator. The summarised consultation responses are as follows. So we got quite a resounding feedback for option 1, and we did get 10 answers of no completely, so they answered no to all of them, and the other 2 was obviously 3. So obviously officers have taken time to look at the best option moving forward to address the issues that have been raised by the operators. There's quite clearly a difference in opinion throughout the trade, and officers feel that we would propose option 3 to remove the elements of the test completely for all new applicants, adopting a policy wording found within section 28 of the report, keeping a section of the test as a driver competency test for basic English, numeracy, and an added test for a satellite navigation system, taking into account the options proposed within the report in sections 16 to 30. Again, technology has changed since the knowledge test was first implemented, but drivers still do need to be able to communicate with their passengers, read a map, basic numeracy knowledge is able to take payments, use the taxi meters, etc. And a local aspect is now covered by the navigation hardware within the vehicles. Rationale behind the proposal: new applicants are taking the test multiple times before giving up. Officers have found that it's having a knock-on effect of numbers of drivers applying for actual licences. Operators are reporting that struggling to obtain new drivers. Once drivers find out of what the application process is, operators are saying that drivers are turning away and applying elsewhere in other boroughs. As a result, the number of out-of-town drivers operating in this area are increasing. It's extremely counterproductive, as our officers have got no enforcement powers over these drivers licensed by other authorities. Comments have been made that drivers now take numerous tests. The test becomes a memory test. They don't actually know what the answers are, they just know what they got wrong in previous tests. It could be argued that the current test requirement to pass a local knowledge is having a detrimental effect on the quality and quantity of South Ribble drivers operating within South Ribble, as obviously, as mentioned before, numbers are depleting. The additional Hackney test would still remain in place and would not be changed. This test requires applicants to answer additional questions related to the additional knowledge required to be a Hackney carriage driver, but Hackney applicants would also benefit from the knowledge test changing, as they're also required to pass the knowledge test alongside the current Hackney carriage test. So members are now asked to make a decision to accept either one of the 3 proposed options within the report or reject any changes within the taxi licensing policy with regards to the knowledge test for new drivers. If members are minded to accept one of the 3 proposed options of the report, then forward this report to the next meeting of the council with a recommendation for formal adoption of the proposed policy option. Members decide on. Thank you. Back to you, Chair.
Okay, thanks for that, Chris. There's a lot in there, to be fair. There's a lot to think of. There's a lot of factors, mitigating factors, which our borough is subjected to, i.e. neighbouring boroughs, technology changes, etc. So, yeah, there's a lot to go through. So, does anyone have any comments initially, please, from the committee? Yeah, Councillor Butterly, please.
Yeah, just one question. If a driver is refused to drive in an area outside of here, would we know about it when they apply to here?
Do you mean with regards to convictions and things like that?
Well, yeah.
Refuse a licence? Yeah, we've basically got the NAFN system up and running, which basically, if any drivers have been refused by another authority, then details get put into the NAFN system, and we dip into that for all new applicants now. As we put drivers that have been refused or revoked here, their details get put into that system as well. It's then up to the 2 authorities to then talk between themselves of what further information is passed on. So we got that passed probably about 6 months ago at committee. So yeah, that's in place now.
Okay, thanks, Julie. Alan?
Chair. Yeah, we've got details of the number of responses. Can you tell us how many resulted in a percentage of people who responded to it?
Chris, yeah.
The whole trade, so every driver got consulted. I think we've roughly got somewhere around 250, 260 drivers at the moment. So that's the feedback we got. A lot of those responses were from a school operator who obviously their best interest is to have the single-use badges in place. So a lot of those responses, around 40, were received from one operator who just performs school contracts.
Okay, Alan? Yeah, okay. Rini?
I've listened to you with saying that the taxis are taking children to school, but you're not saying that they've got carers in the taxis with them to ensure that the children are safe.
That's another element to look at, really. That's dealt with by Lancashire County Council. So all school contract work that we deal with is just licensing operators, whereas if there is chaperones needed, that's dealt with through Lancashire County Council Social Services. We're looking at whether to give them individual badges for single use, or to look whether we get rid of the knowledge test. So what we're looking at is where operators are struggling to obtain drivers, particularly these school contract operators who don't need a local area knowledge element, to scrap it either as a single-use badge or completely remove it for all the trade.
It just makes me wonder.
Sorry, I was just getting a point of clarification. Sorry, go on.
It just makes me wonder, because in the past, we've always known who the carers were in the buses, the taxis or whatever. And now we're not getting any information at all. All we're getting is talking about taxis and taxi drivers. And I don't think it's good enough when children are being moved about from South Ribble, Preston and everywhere else. And we don't know how they are being covered.
Really, can I take that up with you after the meeting? That's a bit of a separate issue for this one, if that's okay. Thank you. Thanks for your comment. Any other comments?
Yes, Chair.
Yes, please, Chair. Yeah. Item 42 says if a driver was found to be in breach of the conditions, they would be taken before General Licensing Subcommittee. How likely is it that we'd find this out? Do we do any spot checks or?
The only way we would find out is if we catch them in the act. So it's why we want to propose to remove basically not use a third type of licence as a single licence and just remove the local element for all new applicants instead, and not bother with this single-use badge and just completely remove it throughout the trade, because we now feel that technology has superseded the need for it. I don't think we need to go down the line of these single-use badges, which could just completely remove it out of the knowledge test completely. And we won't need these single-use badges then, because all applicants won't need to take the actual local element of the knowledge test now.
Okay, Jackie, is that okay? Thank you. Councillor Wharton-Hardman, please. Paul?
Thank you. Apologies, I can't be with you this evening, by the way. I've got COVID, it's horrible. My comments on this, I appreciate, obviously, the technology has taken over and people use sat-navs, but I think we can all appreciate and acknowledge that not all private hire drivers will use sat-navs. I think we've all caught taxis and we've all pre-booked taxis and they've not used sat-navs and they're using their own knowledge, and sometimes I've been in a taxi and had to direct them because they did not take in the shortest route. I've done some looking around as well. Local councils, so the following councils: Preston, Chorley, Blackburn, Wigan, Lancaster, all still have local knowledge tests. So the comments from the officer, whilst I appreciate obviously people may be going to other councils, that's 5 neighbouring councils to us which also have local knowledge tests in place. My main rationale for that would be that obviously I think landmarks is important. There's still no landmarks, and it's important that we acknowledge they don't always use sat-navs. So I think we need to look at not what's just best for the trade, but what's best for our residents as well and the people that actually we're here to serve. So I would be very much in favour of option 1, not to disadvantage those licenses who do the taxis for schools and for airports, etc., but to the ones who are doing local small business locally, that they still have that knowledge and that local information.
Okay, thanks, Paul. I'm going to bring Chris back in, then I'm going to bring Councillor Ogilvie in after that. Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, we have looked at that element. So what we've looked at to address that is we would condition the driver's conditions that on new application or renewal, that we would put a condition into the driver conditions that all drivers must have a sat nav within the vehicle to sort of negate that worry. We have addressed that. We wouldn't need to put that in the actual policy. That would just be a condition which would be added to the conditions. And then all new applicants and all renewal applications, when they receive the conditions attached to the licence, they would then be said that they would have to have a sat nav within the vehicle. There is other councils which have brought these policies into place. We've looked at a few online, and there's Knowsley. They've looked to remove the knowledge test, but remove the local element, but keep an English and maths test in place. And Trafford, they've just recently removed the knowledge test. They've also kept a maths and English test in place, and also a sat-nav test. We've had a look at their test, and we would look to follow what they've done if members are agreed to accept that proposal.
Thanks for that, Chris. Paul, you okay with that?
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you. It was mainly my comments around the local Lancashire councils surrounding us all still have this in place.
Okay, thanks for that, Paul. Alan?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, it was just a bit of clarification on the option 1, which was a restricted plate. I agree with the comment that's actually made. I can't remember exactly which paragraph it is, but basically how would we police they were only used in the categories named in this report. It does mention that you will, if you like, take people to task after the event if they've done something wrong. Well, that's really too late, to be honest. How would, if we went for this restricted plate option, how would members of the public know that the vehicle that they will enter is restricted rather than just private hire, actually, or hackney carriage?
Thanks, Alan. Chris?
Again, we could condition the licence that they must put something in the window. I think it was brought up at the last committee, wasn't it? So that wouldn't probably need to be a policy change. We could just condition that on the actual driver licence, that they have to have a sign in the window. So we could look to do a badge for the actual driver and a vehicle badge that they must have on display. So we can put that in as a condition.
Okay, Alan, yeah, okay.
Yeah, the only comment I would make is I just wonder whether members of the public would understand what that notice said and even would bother to read it. But
Right, thanks for that, Alan. Yes, Councillor Smith?
As regards having sat-navs in the vehicles, and you say you can put a condition on that they've got to have a sat-nav, is that enforceable, legally enforceable?
Sorry,
We'll bring Taz in because Councillor Smith mentioned legal. Taz, you're in.
Thank you, Chair. So if it's a condition, then that is breach, then that would be a breach condition, and that would be enforceable by way of prosecution. Thank you.
Okay, well, yeah, thank you. Just, right, I don't seem to have any more comments, but...
Chair.
Sorry, who's that? Paul again? Paul, in you come, Paul.
Yeah, apologies. So just in relation to the last comment made by Councillor Smith, that they're my concerns as well. It's okay us saying that we have to have a sat-nav in the vehicle, but again, that doesn't mean we have to use that sat-nav. And that, again, relates to my previous comments about people not necessarily knowing where they're going or the area, and that causing problems for our residents.
Okay, thanks for your comment. If you don't mind, what I would like to do, and I hope I'm not putting someone on the spot here, but we value the trade, the industry, and you two turn up at every meeting now, which we really appreciate. And even through the consultation, you were there in all the consultations, so thank you for that. Would you like to make a comment on this because you are the operator? So would you like to, Christine, come forward and press the red button, please, if that's okay. Thank you.
Yeah, we're here at every meeting because we're really passionate about school transport. As we've explained at previous meetings, although a lot of our passengers might live in South Ribble or go to school in South Ribble, they may live or go to school outside of South Ribble. So the local area knowledge test doesn't benefit our drivers at all. We only do one route a day. So we collect children per driver. Yeah. So each driver collects a passenger assistant. To answer the question that was asked before, we either have carers or passenger assistants on our routes, and they may or may not live within the borough. The county council determine where they live, and it's usually based on the relationship that carer or passenger assistant already has with those children. Although we do mainstream schools, the majority of our children go to special educational needs schools, and a lot of those are not within South Ribble, even if the passengers are. So some of them might go as far as Lancaster or Burnley or wherever the needs might be, whatever specialist school they need to go to. So it's not always confined. If they do not have a passenger assistant or a carer, the county council have to issue an additional badge for us, which means an additional check, DBS check, and further things that don't come within the normal checks that are done within the district councils to enable those drivers to be able to transport passengers. And usually that only happens with children of a certain age or children who have less vulnerable needs. So it tends to be sort of college age or mainstream children. And we are really strongly vetted by the county council on that. We have had to license previously through an authority which is actually down in Essex, which, as you can imagine, is not practical at all for us. Mainly because of the local area knowledge test. So we've had to send drivers down to Essex every time they've had to be licensed, which has, as you can imagine, has been really costly. It's limited the amount of drivers we've been able to get on board, and we still have 58 children not going to school within the borough. They are getting transported either by taxis that may not have the same kind of vetting that we have, not got the same experience that our company has, or they are getting taken in by their parents, which is really inconvenient for those parents when they have to work as well and have other responsibilities and other children to get to school. So this is why we're trying to this is why we've requested this.
Is that both here? Brilliant. I love the way you both sit together and then you get the point over. Well, thanks for that. I appreciate it. Okay, right. So, Taz, can you just, how do we take this option for the 1, 2 or 3?
I think officers have already identified which option they'd like to bring forward, but obviously it's up to members at the end of the day. There are 3 options on the table there. It's up to members to consider the consultation responses, consider what the officer has presented in the report tonight, and then if members are in a position to propose and second on a proposal, then they can do. There may be members here that have a particular option that they would like to proceed with. If we have a proposal and a second, and then perhaps, we may have a proposal and second on another option. So it's entirely up to members what they want to do after hearing what they've heard tonight.
Okay, Chris?
Yeah, if I could just, Chair, if I just go over a couple of bit of rationale behind why we want option 3. Numbers are falling of drivers in South Ribble, and we're finding more and more drivers from outside of this borough coming back into this borough operating with licences that they've got from other authorities because they find it way too restrictive to get a licence here. Whether that be the age policy, whether that be the knowledge test, operators are saying they're struggling to get drivers into this borough because they can't pass the test. Like I said in the report, the drivers are taking 4 or 5 tests, they're failing all of them, they're eventually coming back, it becomes a memory test. Drivers going back to the operators reporting what answers they're failing on. They're putting packs together to get the drivers passed. They're coming back to us finally getting a badge. Do they actually have any local knowledge? I would say not. Does the test whether they've got local knowledge? I think it's turned into a memory test. I think we can tailor it to what we need, that they need to use a sat-nav in the vehicles. They still need an English knowledge. They still need numeracy knowledge to be able to work out fares and rates and things like that. And we need to test that they actually know how to use a sat-nav. So when somebody says, I'm going to X to Y, they need to know where them places are. But what we are seeing is operators obtaining licences here, also having operator licences outside of the borough. They're finding it too difficult to licence drivers in this borough. They're then bringing their licensed drivers from outside this area into this area, subcontracting work. So the drivers are in this area anyway, they're just not licensed by this authority. And our officers haven't got any enforcement powers over those drivers that are operating in this borough. I was having a look at statistics yesterday. We had somewhere around 500 licences in 2012. That's almost half now. We've got somewhere around 260. But there's still the same amount of taxis in this borough. And I would say that is because they're out-of-town drivers that are working outside of this borough because they can't get licensed here and they can't get the vehicles licensed here. So we do need to address it. Okay.
Okay, thanks for that, Chris. Okay, I'm going to be so bold as to propose option 3. So, Alan, do you want to?
Well, I just want to ask first whether what I'm about to say is appropriate or not. We've heard the presentation from members of the trade. Would it be appropriate, if they're amenable to it, would they be willing to give their comments on option 3 from their perspective?
Well, Alan, you've just said what I was thinking. And I wasn't really sure how many times I can ask Taz another question here from a legal perspective. But I think because it's come from you, we are going to. So you're going to, but I think it's a fair question. So if you don't mind, do you hear what Councillor Ogilvie just asked? So what he just asked is, what we're proposing is option 3 to go forward to the full council. Do you have any positive or negative comments regarding that option? Do you want to just come to the thing again, please? Because we just need to hear you. Thank you.
Can you just remind me that option 3 is the one that you're saying? Just because I haven't got it.
Well, let's just remind you what it is. Yeah.
Removal of the knowledge element of the test, keep a English, maths and navigation test in place. So it will be a basic English test for communication purposes, numeracy test, and be able to use a sat-nav basically on production of the licence.
Yeah, we'd be absolutely fine with that. There's also the overlap between that and the level 2 qualification. So the English and maths come into that as well. And I think as long as people understand what it is that they are signing up for with becoming a driver with South Ribble, which I think is another element of it, isn't it? Or it was previously. I don't know where you're covering that at the moment. So it might be worth considering that aspect. But we're absolutely fine with, to be honest, we'd be fine with any of the options as long as that local area knowledge test was removed.
Okay, well, thank you. Thanks. We appreciate that because you've given us a bit more knowledge than what we originally had there. So thanks, and thanks, Alan, for the question. Justin, was you just going to add something? Did you? No. Okay. Thanks. Sorry about that, Jackie. I normally get them on the mic, but Chris, you're back in.
So that's proposal 2, option 2, to completely remove all of it. So there's the single-use badges as option 1. Option 2 is completely remove all of it for all drivers. Option 3 is to remove the local element part and keeping an English, maths and satellite navigation test. The issue with conditions, there's a couple of questions out of a bank of about 100 questions currently in the test on conditions and things. All new drivers given a list of conditions anyway, which they must abide by. So they're given a printed list of conditions. So we haven't included that because it's kind of already there when they receive the licence.
Right. Okay. So let's clean this up now. Let's mop this up. So thanks again for your input. What you said, because what you said is all of these options from the trade perspective are good, which is good to hear. So thank you.
For
we
our
do
trade,
value,
definitely, yeah. For our part of the trade, because we're not taxi drivers.
No,
just because we're licensed as drivers, we don't perform taxi driver job.
That's right. That's why I said trade. So it's the broader perspective. Yeah. Okay. But we still value everything you do. Okay. I know you're not day to day, but you're not day to day, but in a different capacity. So thanks for that. So can we just need to mop this up our end, Chris? So are we now proposing option 3? Yeah. Okay. Because we've just debated that other issue and then we've cleaned that up. Okay. So we are still going with option 3. And the industry is feeling, the trade is feeling the benefit for it, and we are improving our policy. So it sounds reasonable. So I'm proposing still, before I look for the second there, I think Rini wants to come in.
Well, I'm sat listening to you talking about taxi and that. I'm just wondering how many of you use a taxi, because I use one 2 or 3 times a week, and I use them from Preston and South Ribble, and I don't see anything. And then I hear about children going on buses. I had foster children who had problems, who got on a bus to go to Ormskirk every day to school to help with these problems. And yet, nobody's ever mentioned these type of children. It's as though they're not there, they're invisible.
So really, can you just do your mic and I'll Really, let me really value your point. Honestly, it's just context. There's a time and a place, and we will come back, and I will speak to you privately about that. But the trade to clear up actually your query before about the care and the facility and the taxi. So we just don't want to confuse the issue right now, but I will come back to you on that. But I was in a taxi last weekend, so just to let you know. So can I, last weekend, yeah, it's only 2 days ago. Councillor Mon, you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm for option 3. I think it is very important that we keep the test for the highway code and in the English skills and anything like that that's would be useful. What you certainly don't want someone who can't even speak the language in the vehicle. So I think from that point of view, I would be in favour of going for option 3.
Okay, thanks for that, Peter. So we've had a proposal and a second there. If we've got no alternatives, are we okay to go to the vote? Yeah? Okay, Colin, do you want to take this vote? Show of hands for. So Taz, do you want to just remind us? And then we'll go for the show of hands and then for and against, and then we'll conclude that item. Thank you.
So we have a proposer and a seconder in respect of option 3. And option 3 is remove the local knowledge test or the local area knowledge element of the test, keep the knowledge test in place, but remove the local aspect of the test completely for PH drivers, keeping a section of the test for highway code, English and maths, and the satellite navigation system. So members that are for that, please obviously show your hands. And also the other element that you need to obviously vote on is if this proposal goes forward, it will go to the next meeting of the council. So can we have a vote for option 3, please? Okay. So all those in favour of option 3? That seems to be unanimous. So
thanks, yes. Taz. And is that also the vote for full council
yes.
as well? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks everyone. Okay, that concludes agenda item 5. So agenda item 6, please. Consultation feedback request for the taxi tariff increase for Hackney carriages. Again, over to you, Chris. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Just sharing my screen again, one moment, please. Okay, yep, so agenda item 6, request for a taxi tariff increase. So at the last meeting of the Licensing and Public Safety Committee on the 5th of January 2022, members were informed of a written request from the trade for an increase in the tariff of charges set by this authority. Sorry about that. Start again there, sorry, Chair. Okay, so agenda item 6, request for taxi tariff increase. As we said at the last meeting of the committee on the 5th of January 2022, members were informed we got a written request from the trade asking for an increase in the tariff for charges set by this authority. Members were advised that the last tariff increase agreed by this committee was back in 2015. And tonight's report is to inform members of the feedback of the consultation exercise that was run during January and February. So just a recap of the proposal by the trade. So the following 4 increases have been requested. So an increase on the start-up fee only of 50 pence. No charge increase on the charge per mile. So tariff 1 would go from 220 to 270 start-up. Tariff 2, £3, £3.50. Tariff 3, £4, £4.50. The soiling charge is currently £40. The trade have asked for an increase up to £100. At the last meeting, the trade did discuss why. Obviously, if they're out of work on a Saturday night, somebody gets in the taxi at 11 o'clock, soils the taxi, they're out of work for the whole evening there. So they've tried to incorporate that in the charge. That's a maximum charge as well. They can charge underneath that, but that is the maximum they would be allowed to charge. A waiting time increase from 10 pence every 30 seconds to 10 pence every 20 seconds. An additional charge for carrying dogs would increase from 60 pence per dog to £1. And obviously they can't charge for any assistance dogs. Okay. Some factors to consider as to reasoning to the increase of the tariffs. So various factors have been mentioned by the trade as to why they feel it's reasonable time to increase the tariffs set by this authority. So they've had no cost of living increase since 2015. The cost of recent fuel increases. Second-hand vehicle costs are increasing, and the age policy requires the vehicles to be changed when they reach a certain age, and owners must outlay for a new vehicle which meets the requirements of the policy. COVID lockdown, the impact on drivers, obviously lack of work, less people using taxis because of the fear of COVID, a lack of grants available for licensed drivers, and minimum wage increases for the general public. So where does the current fare charge sit? So nationally, South Ribble currently positioned 236 out of 359 councils, recorded in a table of most expensive fares within the country. Compared to other local northwest councils, figures worked out on a 2-mile journey, South Ribble sit currently 5th, but other local authorities are also looking at their tariffs at the moment. So they've sit 6th in that table, Blackburn are the dearest and Chorley are currently the cheapest at £5.10. The current charge would put them up to the same fee as Blackburn. But like I said, there is other authorities looking at theirs at the moment. So we had a taxi trade forum on Wednesday, 12th of January. Some members of the trade and representatives in attendance at the forum felt that maybe the proposed increase was not high enough, given that an increase had not been received since 2015. The chair and officers encouraged the trade to meet collectively to complete a consultation feedback, advising of what increase the fare they thought to be appropriate. Before the feedback to the next meeting tonight, a second trade forum was proposed to help the trade collectively give feedback and to help their decision to give a clear sight to the trade, what they were collectively asking for. So at the second forum, the trade explained, they collectively discussed the proposal. A representative of the trade said they all agree with the original proposal. The trade believe the general public is also going through financial hard times at the moment, and to ask for a further increase to the original proposal would be unfair on the customers and would not look good on the trade themselves within the borough. Consultation. So as per the requirements under section 65 part 2 of the Act, a public notice was placed within the Lancashire Evening Post within the specific time requirements. A notice was displayed on the council's reception area, and a copy of the consultation document was placed on the council's website. Paper consultation forms once again was provided to every licensed driver, and the summarised consultation responses are as follows. Yes was 57 and no was 3. So section 65 of the Act states that if no objections are received, then the tariff should be accepted as proposed. The result of the consultation is resoundingly in support of the proposed increase, with only 3 members of the trade out of the 60 responses not supporting the increase. We actually received no members of public objections either. Officers prevailed that, taking into account the factors mentioned in 16 to 23 of the report, to agree to the proposal. Members are now asked to make a final decision to accept, reject or modify the proposed change of the tariff fares set by this authority in line with section 65 part 4 of the Act, which states that the District Council should set a further date no later than 2 months after the first specified date, which the table of fares shall come into force with or without modifications, as decided by them after consideration of the objections. So we received 57 consultation responses in support and 3 objections to the increase. That's back to you, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, Chris. Good presentation again. Can I just say before we open this up, this was our officers done a brilliant job on this, because what happened was we had a meeting with the trade, and during that meeting it was felt that we needed a bit more reassurance, a bit more guidance, and our officers facilitated additional consultation meetings with the trade on this. So well done to the officers in terms of your support for the trade and the sector. And we reiterated at the time that what happened actually was the first meeting we had, I think you were there as well, Peter, we sort of encouraged them and said, if you get together collectively, you can ask for what you want. No, we're not telling you what you want. And in effect, as you can see, it's a resounding 57 against 3. But I don't know what the 3 was saying, but I'm not sure they understood. So what we're asking here tonight is, because this has been well debated, well consulted, we are offering our trade an opportunity to earn more, to be recognised in terms of when people soil taxis, etc. And I think all round it was a good piece of work by the officers, so well done, everyone. So for me, it's pretty straightforward, resounding approval, but I'm going to open up to the committee. If anyone, Councillor Molly, you first. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. From my point of view, I think it has been exhausted, and it's been well worth going to all that exhaustion to make sure we get it right. And I think it's only fair these increases. I must admit, I thought they might have even been higher than this. So I think, to be fair, the comment was made about to the clients, they wanted to be reasonable, and I think that's fair from the taxi trade themselves. The only thing I'm still a little bit concerned about, and I did voice my opinion before about this £100 from 40 to 100, I do appreciate, and it was clarified a little bit more this evening by saying it can put them out for the evening. And but my concern would be, how do we say if something happens that the taxi driver wouldn't charge them £100 anyway? Have we got some kind of condition we can put on that, or how we do it, or is it just going to be left to the taxi driver to decide? So if someone, I don't know, just soils, if you can talk about soiling not very much and soiling too much type of thing, I can understand the £100 for that. But how are we doing that? We're just leaving it to the taxi driver to decide.
Thanks for that, Peter. Yeah, so Chris, we asked for the discretion. I personally would charge them 500, but that's a different matter altogether, Chris.
I don't know how we'll police that, councillor, to be honest. I think I get what point you're making. Somebody could put muddy feet in a taxi, and somebody could be sick on a taxi at 10 o'clock at night on a Saturday night, or it could be a school job where they're taking a child home and they put muddy feet in the back of the taxi. I get what you're saying there. The only way we could do that would put a scale on certain amounts of soilage, but who would police that? That's the problem. They would have to bring the vehicle into us when it had been soiled to sort of regulate that.
Thanks, Chris. Peter, there's hands going over everywhere over this one. Just before I bring Alan in and Julie, Chris, Justin, please, do you want to just come in? Justin, do us a favour, because of Jackie has with the hearing. Could you just come to the mic and speak? Thank you.
I think this was brought up by one of the drivers at the last meeting. He said, regardless of whether we increase it or leave it as it is, they have a real problem in getting this money off people that soil anyway. So it is, in essence, irrelevant what the actual charge is.
Thanks for that, Justin. Alan, then Julie, please.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I was going to make the same comment as that, because I did ask the question of the trade at the last forum. How do they actually get the money back from the customer? And the answer was, sometimes we don't, we can't. So I think as it stands, the way it's presented, I think is fine. Overall, I think the proposal is extremely fair in some respects based on the current situation. I think if the consultation perhaps had been done now rather than a couple of months ago, that the charge per mile may have been an issue in terms of going up. So the fact that this proposal is asking for that not to go up, I think is fairer than fair, to be honest. And I'm happy to vote for this proposal.
Thanks for that, Alan. And it's good to hear fair getting mentioned a lot. So good. Julie?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think if they've jumped the gun a bit, the drivers, haven't they really? Had they done it now, they would have had to put a lot more, because fuel's not going to go down. It's going to go up more, isn't it? I don't know how they're going to manage, to be honest.
Good point.
I really don't. Okay.
Chris, you want to come in?
When we've spoke to the trade, we have said to them if they want to put another request in, maybe next year they can readjust and look again. As fuel costs are going up, they could look to put another tariff increase in. The only real cost is to the licensing services advertising it in the newspaper. So I have no problems with them coming back again. We've openly said that to them. So if they want to readdress it again next year, if they're obviously incurring more costs for fuel costs, they could look at that again then. Yeah.
All right, Julia. Okay. Paul, you're on the Teams. You want to come in, Paul?
Thank you. Clearly, the trade's finding running vehicles considerably a lot more expensive now. The price of the fuel pumps, as we've all seen, is going to go up and up and up. And it's gone up over the past couple of years, and we've not increased our fares, which has obviously made a great difference to the trade. We do have a duty to balance the needs of the travelling public with the trade's ability to make a reasonable living, and I feel this increase is justified, and I would be supporting it as well and voting for it if I was in the chamber with you. My comments on the soiling charge, again, I personally agree with you, Chair. I'd put it much higher if I possibly could. And as per some of the comments mentioned about how much of the trade going to charge if somebody vomits or somebody urinates, etc., we need to remember that all our taxi drivers do a fit and proper person test. So we should be employing them to actually use their decision and use their judgment based on that fit and proper person test that they've undertaken to become a taxi driver in the first place. So I would wholeheartedly support this. If at the end of the day, if the trade isn't profitable, that they're not going to be there to offer a service, which ultimately will impact on our residents as well.
Okay, thanks for that, Paul. I think it's important, even though you can't vote, that you do indicate which way you're going to. So thanks for that. Appreciate it. Councillor Blow?
Yeah, I'm listening to you all about the price of everything, and taxes are going up. I pay from here just over £10 to get home from a council meeting. Now that's a lot of money, but I'm lucky that I just get an allowance, which helps. But there's elderly people out there who haven't got that kind of money, and they're stuck in Preston and all over the place. Can't get on a bus. The other day I stood at the bus stop and waited for 4 buses before one turned up to bring the people back into South Ribble. Now I don't think that's fair whatsoever, and it's costing taxi money. I mean, if you want to pay taxes, it's all right. But if you haven't got the money and you're an elderly person, you need to look after them as well. Never mind taxi drivers at the minute, because some of them are charging a lot of money. And I am friendly with a taxi driver in Preston who does look after me, so I can't complain about him.
Thanks for your comments. Appreciate them. Okay, Chris?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. I think with the greatest of respect, they're not a charity, are they? It's a business. It's their means of keeping a living for their family. And they're trying to make as much money as possible, if you understand where I'm coming from with that. And it is a job for them. And I think members of the trade did comment on that afterwards. So I'm just supporting the trade with that I understand that, but it is their business and it's their way of life to make money.
Okay, fair comments from both sides. Thanks, really. Thanks. Don't be shouting at me. Okay, thank you. Councillor Smith, please.
Thank you. I think it's a very fair proposal. Considering the state of what's going on in the world at the moment, I don't think you could actually expect them not to actually want to put fares up. As Chris has quite rightly said, they can come back again if they need to, and I think they probably will be having to come back again because it's going only one way, as everybody has said. And you're quite right, they are not a charity, they're in there, it's the business, they have got to make a living, they've got to make sure that they actually make a proper, decent living, and we wouldn't want it to do any other way. Otherwise, you're going to get rogue taxi drivers all over the place if we're not careful. So you've got to make sure that we regulate it properly and give them a fair living and a fair amount of leeway. And if they've got to come back, they've got to come back.
Thanks, Councillor Smith. I'm going to bring in Councillor Jackie, please, and then I'll bring you in after that, Taz, if that's okay. Jackie?
Yeah, I just want to say I agree. It is a fair proposal. With regards to the soiling issue, I think that they've already built in a kind of a catch-all by saying it puts them out of business for the night. So they can lose far more trade by not operating and claiming the £100 than they can actually working. Thanks.
Thanks, Jackie. Taz?
Thank you, Chair. Just a point I picked up in terms of, obviously, Councillor Ogilvy proposed the table of affairs without modification. Just one point for committee is that you need to obviously implement some kind of date in respect of that, so that the actual table of affairs comes into effect. So it has to be within 2 months of today's committee meeting.
Thanks for that, Taz. Very useful. Alan?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It's just a quick point of clarification. Chris has mentioned that the taxi trade perhaps could come back in 12 months' time. Is that any kind of set figure, or could they come back shorter? Because you can see over the next 12 months, the price of fuel will go like that. To wait 12 months for another review, possibly, maybe too long.
I'm going to be so bold as to answer on behalf of Chris and Taz, which is risky. I think they can come back at any time. Am I right? Yeah. Okay. All right. So there's a lot of love in the room here. Before we just conclude matters, and I know you're not the day-to-day, I know you do your service, would the trade representatives like to make a comment on this finally? No? Okay. Thanks. Right. So Taz, do you want to just remind us again?
I think we've got a proposer. I think Councillor Oldby actually proposed the table of affairs without modification. Just as I've said before, you need some kind of date in terms of when that will be implemented. So it's 2 months, within 2 months of today. I mean, obviously, Chris can comment on this, but I would suggest maybe the new financial year, so by the 5th of April.
Well, thanks for that, Taz. I know we're going to bring Chris in, but I was going to say as soon as possible. But Chris, yeah.
We will need to check meters, so it would give officers enough time to check vehicles. As obviously, as the tariff changes, the driver's going to go after the ones with mechanical meters. They're going to have to go out and get those altered. So it will give us a chance to bring drivers in one by one and just double check that the meters are running at the correct rate. So yeah, that would be okay for the beginning of the financial year.
So we're going to take a vote, show of hands again, Coral, on approving this, but with a date of the implementation of the 5th of April. Yeah? Everyone?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think we have a seconder yet.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, we're looking for a second there.
Yeah,
Excuse me, Paul.
I'm quite happy to second that, Chair.
Thanks, Jackie. Paul, again, you want to come in? Finally.
Just a very quick one. It's just a very quick one. The 5th of April, I'm just trying to make this easier for residents as well, so they know the 5th of April is a Tuesday, and whilst it's the beginning of a financial year, would it not make it more appropriate to just, it's literally, if we did it on the 1st of April, which is a Friday, but it's the start of a month, and that only gives the trades 2 extra working days, I suppose, to get the meters, so it wouldn't impede too much, I believe, on officers, and it makes it easier from a resident's point of view for us to communicate from the beginning of April.
Did you say the 1st of April, Paul?
Yeah, the 1st of April, I know it's a Friday, but if we then, it'd make it easier from a comms point of view, we communicated from the beginning of April rather than Tuesday, the 5th of April, if you know what I mean.
Paul, I'm only saying that there's a few smiles in the room about it being April Fool's Day, but we'll take it on board and yeah, we'll just work with the officers and we'll confirm it's going to be either one of those dates. So thank you for that, Paul. Right, show of hands, yeah, for our proposal here, and a second there by Councillor Morth. Excuse, we said the we'll suggest the 1st, but if it can't be achieved, the 5th. Right, so I've gone for 4. Anyone against? Thanks for that, really. Okay, Coral, yeah. Taz, do you want to just conclude?
Thank you, Chair. That proposal has actually carried. So the table of affairs has been adopted without modification to be brought into effect on the 1st of April. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks for that, Taz. Okay, everyone. Last item, item number 7. There's a clue in the title, the statutory HMRC checks for taxi, private hire, driver applications, statutory requirements to legal requirements. So hopefully, Chris, you want to just explain a couple of bits on this in your presentation? Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. I'll just get my PowerPoint up. Hopefully be a bit quicker this time. Everybody see that okay? Yep. Okay, so agenda item 7. That isn't the right one, sorry.
It is. It is.
It's not come through right.
That was just as well.
Come on. Okay, so sorry about that. So statutory HMRC checks for all taxi private hire driver applications. So the government's putting in place a new tax requirement for all applications for certain licences from the 4th of April 2022. This is supported by a new digital service being developed by the HMRC. The check is simply to confirm that someone is appropriately registered for tax. The check will only be required for renewal applications. There'll be a small addition to the checks our licensing team perform when renewal applications are received for the following types of licences. So Hackney and private hire renewal applications for drivers, operator renewal applications, and it also includes scrap metal renewal applications, but we don't need to implement that in the policy. Tax checks should only take a few minutes. When applicants have completed the tax check online, they'll then receive a code. This code is then presented as part of their application documentation. Licensing officers will not proceed with an application for the renewal until the tax check is complete and they've received the code. Officers will then enter the tax code into the gov.uk website for confirmation from HMRC that the drivers have completed the tax check. And as I said before, we don't actually have a policy for scrap metal, so there isn't actually one needed for that. So the proposal is that to change the taxi licensing policy can be found within section 17 of the report. The HMRC check is mandatory for all applications, and if the council does not commence the procedure with the checks of the renewal applications for the mentioned licence types, then it risks the consequence of action from central government. If members are minded to accept the proposal for the changes to the taxi licensing policy to incorporate the HMRC checks, then this report needs to be forwarded to the next meeting of the full council with a recommendation for adoption of the proposed policy. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks for that, Chris. So I'm not sure what other comments we're going to get, but we haven't got much choice, whatever the comments are. So this one is a statutory requirement. So I don't know if anyone Alan wants to come in.
Yeah, just a point of clarification, which maybe you can't answer. It's maybe up to the government to answer, but this is only for new applications. This one, as soon as this comes in, there's obviously going to be a huge number of people who aren't doing it relative to new applications. Is there a logical reason why we haven't asked everybody to do this within a certain time period?
Thanks, Alan. Thanks, Alan. Chris?
The HMRC have just required it for renewal applications upon application. So drivers who say have got a 3-year badge last month, they won't need to do it now for another 3 years. But somebody whose badge runs out in June, they'll need to do a HMRC check. And as we go along, everybody will eventually renew and do a HMRC check.
Okay, Alan, thanks. This is being checked with TAS. This is one of those issues we have to adopt it, we have to accept it, and that's the way it is. So really, I'm going to move to do we need a proposal? Just go for the vote. We need a proposal, please. Councillor Smith's going to propose. Looking for the seconder over this side. Councillor Alty is going to second it. Thank you very much. And let's go for the vote for. Against. Okay, thank you for that. And I did need to bring you two in on that one, but thanks for staying. Right, so in conclusion, first of all, thanks to our officers for all the hard work you've done in the intervening period. Excellent stuff. Thanks to the committee members for coming tonight and our substitutes. Thanks, Margaret. And thanks to the trade for once again turning up. Now, you might think it's a small thing, but we really think it's a big thing. So please keep coming and spread the word, because we do appreciate you coming here tonight. So that's formally going to close the meeting. So thank you, everyone. Have a safe journey home.